one of the ones that I struggle with the most, there's actually a couple. But we also talked about how we feel that, like, when we talk about toxic, it always feels like you're talking about those people.
Yes.
And it's hard to recognize in ourselves toxic habits.
Very much true.
Ain't that a trip?
It is
To be
true.
like, what? I'm toxic? So first, I know this is the idea of toxic people and toxic habits has been around, but the name is newer.
Yeah.
What does a toxic person or toxic habit, what does it mean to you in your circle? You're single, so as we talk about relationships, it'll be from that perspective on your side, and then we want you to chime in. So if you're on YouTube, comment, because I see it, and then you can join the discussion. And what's up,
family?
YouTube? I mean, Facebook.
Yeah.
So what is toxic people? What do they mean to you? What does it mean?
Oh, I mean, I've had my share of toxic relationships. I think with the 7 points, the one that hit me the most that I've at least experienced in my life is point number 2, which is making fairness and balance a relationship priority. And the thing is what I found for me is and it doesn't matter whether it's like a dating relationship or just a friendship where it's so one-sided, but I want to change it and fix it to make it a balanced relationship. But if it's, and again, like, that's on me. Where it needs to be, I want to fix it because I want it to work out, if that makes sense. But that doesn't mean that it's healthy, and there's times when boundaries are good. And learning when to put those boundaries in place. But boundaries are really hard.
Yeah, they are hard to figure out. We're looking at this article, 7 Toxic Relationship Habits That Seem Perfectly Normal. And it starts off by saying, we took chemistry, algebra, PE, right? We learned the Pythagorean theorem, never used it. But never did we learn how to be successful in relationship as direct and as formal as we do other things. And so toxic habits are not only normal in our society, but they're worshipped. So think Disney stories, but Hollywood movies, right? Hollywood movies. Once I go through the toxic habits, you'll see. But they're celebrated, right? And they feel passionate, or they feel like they're normal. The things that really make a relationship good and stable and fulfilling are boring, right? They're not very exciting, nor do they sell well or feel dramatic enough to put on screen. And so as you're coming up, you're picking up these habits or calling things normal. They're normalized because you see it in culture and you see it in your movies. So if you're listening, you're probably like me. You're probably like, hold up, I don't do that. I don't celebrate it. It's not normal to me because I'm a believer. Well, I looked through some of these and I was like, oh my goodness, I do some of it. Like, we're not supposed to conform to the world, but we're all sinners, right? So the first one, and we'll share the list on the feed, is expecting your partner to fix any emotional distress.
Oof.
We'll unpack some of these, but I'll share them and then we'll start talking. Making fairness and balance a relationship priority. So is it fair? If I cook, does he wash the dishes? And more. Number 3, thinking of your partner as your second half. Isn't that like a normal thing we do? Is that toxic? Maybe you disagree. Speaking in absolutes. Brian and I talk about a lot about that. That's something, or a rule in his marriage that he said they're gonna stop doing. When you say, you never listen to me, or you're always yelling. Speaking in absolutes is toxic. Number 5, intense conflict means passion. For those that are not familiar with my culture, I grew up watching novelas. Have you seen novelas? Like soap operas in Spanish?
Oh, yeah.
Oh my goodness, the drama and the intensity of the conflicts.
You hurt me, but I still love you.
No, and then all of this. So it is kind of glorified. That's a toxic perspective. Dropping hints. That's one I struggle with. Quote unquote, what is it? Passive aggressiveness. I struggle with that sometimes. And then finally, believing in the idea of soulmates. That's also toxic. So
Yeah.
tell me which one you struggle with, and then we'll unpack some of the ones we resonate with. Sarah says, some of those points sort of surprised me.
Yeah.
Others, not so much. Which one surprised you, Sarah?
She said the one about fairness and balance was one.
The one, okay,
Yeah.
she struggles with? I can't remember them off my head. I would think that wanting fairness and balance is good. And so let's look at that.
Yeah.
Wanting fairness and balance. So obviously, fairness and balance sounds like two admirable qualities, which is probably why you're surprised, Sarah. But sometimes in relationships, fairness and balance look a lot like keeping score. Isn't that the truth?
Yeah.
And especially, it's hard to have a servant mindset if you're trying to make sure that it's fair and balanced. If you find yourself mentally computing the effort your partner is putting in and how it relates to the effort you're putting in, or if either of you are retaliating hurt feelings by bringing up past arguments, this could be a sign that one or both of you are more focused on keeping score than keeping the relationship happy. It's also the idea that Roy brought up about it's not 50-50. 50-50 is very much fair and balanced. Is it fair and balanced? And as a believer, Roy Ackerman, who was on with us this morning, was saying that he and his wife have the attitude of it's 100% my responsibility. My marriage is 100%. And so the article says, what do you do instead? Know that relationships do not have to be fair in order to be good. If you live together, reevaluate your chore chart. It doesn't have to be equal. And it shows itself in chores, but fairness and balance is also about the idea of, are you putting in effort in our marriage?
Yeah.
And am I always the one forgiving? That kind of idea.
Yeah.
Nathan said, I struggle with thinking of your partner as your second half.
That's another one.
Wow, coming from a guy, can you unpack that? How do you resonate? You said that's another one.
Yeah, I think the one that really...
No, but you said about the other half.
Oh, the other half.
You did that stick out to you? Oh, okay.
That one didn't stick out to me. The one that stuck out to me, that was kind of surprising. And maybe because I think if you see it in a relationship and you experience it, is intense conflict means passion.
Oh, yeah.
I don't... Maybe that's just me, but I don't know if people really would feel that, oh, like, we just need to argue and we need to, you know what I mean? I don't know.
Well, it brought up the example of certain movies.
Oh,
the idea how,
yeah.
like, if you were intensely disagreeing,
Yeah.
and then you make up.
And just, like, have,
like, that's all, like, oh, there's...
moment.
Yeah. Sarah says, I can understand how that fairness and balance could become a score-keeping problem.
Yeah.
I think it's the... trying to make sure it's fair and balanced. If it just, I think maybe, Sarah, what you're thinking is, if you're both thinking of each other, it will be fair and balanced.
Yeah.
But if I'm trying to make sure things are fair and balanced, then it can make me more unhealthy in that sense.
I think that one, it's hard because I kind of get where Sarah's coming from, and I think Mike as well, where it seems a little bit misleading because, like, when you think of a healthy relationship, it is balanced. I mean, there's times where it should ebb and flow.
Yeah.
Like, for example, if, like, someone I'm dating is going through a tough time, then I step in. And I can, like, lift them up. Or, like, vice versa. And I assume it's the same in marriage. But I think that's why it seems a little bit, like, misleading, if that makes sense.
It ebbs and flows, and I think you're also hinting at there have been seasons where Len is doing a whole lot of the giving. Or seasons, let's say he's going through a stressful time, and I'm the one that's kind of carrying him through. So I think, like you're saying, in the big picture, we're balancing each other because we're always trying to see, I got you. Are you weak this season? I got you.
And that feels oddly balanced, if that makes sense. Yeah. So I totally get that.
Miss Anita says, praise God for godly young women who refuse to be pressured to settle for toxicity. Oh, we love you. More power to Kelly as she waits on God's best.
I'm waiting. It's not easy, but I'm waiting.
Dr. Morocco says, as far as second half, you aren't seeing your spouse as their own person. Yeah, I like that. And Jennifer, when I saw that one, it also made me think about how the false idea that our spouse completes us and how it puts us also in an attitude or expectation that we're waiting for stuff from them that only Jesus can do. Like, Lynn is not my Jesus. He's not my savior. It's not his job to make me happy. It's not his job to, none of that. There's false expectations we put on our spouse when we have the attitude of they're my other half.
Yeah, and I think even in a dating relationship that you kind of tend to overlook stuff because you're like, oh no, like I need to continue this. And I think that's a mentality that gets you stuck in a relationship that maybe isn't meant for you or it isn't God's timing. That's something that I ran into is if like someone was promising marriage and engagement, but it was never happening.
Yeah.
I still, in my mind, was romancing the idea that it was. And so you got to see actions with words, I would say.
Yeah.
So I understand that one.
Yeah. Sarah, I agree. I think, now this isn't a Christian article, so as a believer, I am Len's helpmate, and I can see how the Lord made me to complement him. But I do agree that the idea of he completes me isn't healthy before marriage or in marriage. Because I think about single women and how we've had from Boundless, Lisa Anderson, and how she was saying, I am complete. I don't need.
Yes.
And you got these younger women or single women feeling like you're not complete until you find your spouse.
My life hasn't started until I've met the one.
And the Lord made you complete. And as a complete person, I'm coming into marriage to enrich his life, but not to complete his life. The Lord completes your life.
Well, and not only that, what it does too is you end up putting your own life on hold for something that's maybe not, like, it may not even be that season for your life, but you've put your life on hold, holding off on opportunities for yourself because you're waiting.
Yeah.
And hoping is not bad either, but you shouldn't put your life on hold just, for something like that. So
Jennifer, I'm sorry. I actually confused your name because you guys are both Jennifers and I love you both dearly. And so I was, when I saw your name, I thought Jennifer Jones. And so I said Dr. Jones. I was all messed up.
We'll just give you an honorary degree.
Yes.
Because you're that awesome.
Yeah, exactly. Tara, what's up?
Hey, girl.
Hashtag Team Jannelle. Tara says, I will say that I grew up on the princess movies. I believe in soulmates. And I believe that when I got married, my husband would fix all my problems. My life would be complete. Thank God he had the courage to tell me that I put a lot of pressure on him, like he is on a pedestal.
Like
a pedestal. We do that. And then you live your life with your spouse disappointed because they can't complete you. So it's not fair to them. It changes the tone of your marriage. And then you're cheating yourself of complete dependence on the Lord, right? Because if there's things that I'm like, well, Len's not giving me this, giving me that, whatever it is, I'm missing out on, like, no, that's not his job. The Lord does that. And so thank you for sharing that, Tara. Yes, the Disney movies do it, and Hollywood does it. Jennifer says toxic relationships can be, can be friendships as well. As Christians, I think it's harder to walk away from those. Jennifer, can you share toxic habits you've seen in friendships? That's a good one. And it's so important to recognize because we stay around and let it
I think you want
consume us.
I don't know if you guys have experienced this where you enter a friendship and you want to help them so much that you actually end up enabling them and actually not helping them at all. Those are hard.
Marcy on YouTube, buenos dias. She says she loves the topic and she is seeing the light. Yeah, it's hard. I like what Roy Ackerman said this morning when we were talking about it. My attitude in this conversation is, what am I doing that's toxic? So I'm not just pointing to like other people around us, but me. Like Jennifer said, am I a friend that has toxic habits? You may not be a toxic person, but I think we all have areas or seasons where when we're being toxic or things we do that are toxic.
And I don't know about you, Jannelle, but I feel like when you experience like toxic habits, it also causes bitterness.
Yeah.
In some circumstances. So, how would you encourage someone to start combating the bitterness in their relationships?
When you're being toxic?
Yeah.
I like what Roy said about I can only fix myself. So I think bitterness sometimes in relationships, marriage or friendships, come because you want to fix the other person or you're mad that they're not filling expectations or so I think kind of catching yourself and saying what can I do to make it better and what can I own in this relationship. I love that Roy kept saying you can't change other people. It's already hard. Like he brought up a great example. I was like, ooh, I see that. He's like, you can't make somebody quit sugar. You can't even make yourself quit sugar. How am I going to make somebody else? But his point was, think of things that you need to change in yourself and how long it's taken you and all that. How do you think you're going to be able to do that in somebody else's life? And I think that helps you. That's one way you can help yourself not become bitter.
Yeah.
Sarah says, Jannelle, do people use the phrase media naranja in DR to refer to their spouse? Yes, they do. That is common here in Ecuador and Peru, but it definitely lends the idea of my better half. Culture may make that more or less a toxic idea.
What is media naranja?
Media, like half an orange. So it's an expression of your half, like you're my like other half.
Like part of. Oh, okay. Just one clarification. Thanks.
Sarah is responding to Tara. Tara said about she grew up on princess movies. Yeah. And Sarah says, I think a lot of churches also teach the idea of finding the one God has for you. And that isn't biblical. I was raised in a school environment that prompted that idea, not necessarily my church. Even scarier than Disney is thinking you are marrying a man who isn't God's will for you. Wow, Sarah. But how do you, like, as you're raising daughters, I agree with you, that's wrong. As you're raising daughters, what do you teach instead? If it's not, is it God's will? Like, you know God knows who you're going to marry. And you want to line, and you know that you can pick one that God would be like, no, that's not what I had for you.
Yeah.
You know, so what do you communicate to your daughters instead? What's the best advice you've gotten as a single woman in that area?
I think, well, during this season, what I'm praying for is for, first, God's will in that this is a desire of His heart for me.
Yeah.
And then also wanting God's best.
Yeah.
So being willing and waiting for the individual that would be best suited.
Best suited. So it could be, there's a number of people.
Yeah, and there could be like a number of people who are suited for me. And I think you need to open opportunities for God to move and allow that to happen.
Yeah.
But, yeah, it's hard. This is the one I actually struggle with because in my mind, the thought that I think is, well, if God can create the universe, then who am I to say that He couldn't create someone specifically for me?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And He could have like multiple people that are created who could be good options for me. I definitely agree with that.
Yeah.
But that one's hard because in my heart, what I want is someone specifically created for me.
Yeah.
And I for them.
But isn't it good news to know there's a number of people?
Yeah.
Like it takes the pressure off even of you.
Yeah.
Because it's like Brian said, he's like, what if the person's in Tokyo? Like there's one person and to feel like...
I'm like here in the U.S. I'm like missing someone in Tokyo. Yeah.
Tina, what's up? On YouTube. I love your comment. You're answering Kelly's question about what do you do when you start developing bitterness because toxicity in a relationship can create bitterness. And she
Yes.
says bitterness can stem from hurt feelings.
Yes.
Unforgiveness, yes. If you hold on to hurt feelings, you become
yes.
bitter. I also agree that Disney movies made me think a man would be my savior. Isn't that
Yes.
crazy? And how we got to catch
True.
Disney movies, Hollywood, period. Like, one thing I catch myself from telling my daughters is, this is like a slowly different topic, but just being mindful of the messages that come across.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you're going to have your babies. Or they like, oh, I'm going to have a boy and a girl. And we take for granted, like, dude, you don't know what's happening. And we got this fixed idea on what life will look like, you know, and so.
And you could even struggle with having kids.
Yeah.
You know, and that's
they may adopt their babies, you know. So thank you, Tina. You're right about being mindful with Disney movies and just Hollywood in general and culture and the way they define our expectations. Jennifer says, friendships that are competitive or emotionally destructive make you doubt your core beliefs or tear you down because of them, encourage you to sin. Jennifer, correct me if I'm wrong, I think women especially struggle with being competitive in friendship. Is that a toxic habit you think we have? Or men, if you could be like, no, we do that too. But you don't think, like, we put guards up. We don't really show who we are. We're always sizing each other up. I know men, because I talked to Len about this. He was like, men do that. I just don't know. I don't know. Like, but I agree. I think that's a toxic habit in friendships.
And I think a part of it too is the whole comparison game. Especially, like, and men deal with comparison too in their own ways, but at least that's what I see is emotionally comparing our lives to each other and seasons. Like, I can have friends who are in different seasons, like friends who are married, but that doesn't mean I want their relationship.
Yeah.
And so that can be hard. I've been there.
Sandy, what's up, Sandy? She says, my husband and I got married when we were 26. We were well on our own paths and not looking for someone to complete us. Ooh, that's good.
Yeah.
We were looking for a partner of the same mindset. Philippians 2:2 is our life verse, where Paul says, make my joy complete by being of the same, maintaining the same love, united in spirit, intent on one purpose.
Yes, I love that.
So
I love
good,
that.
Sandy.
That's encouraging.
Yeah, really, really good. Let me see. Mike has been sharing. Mike, I love to see your comments. He says, I do say that I mean what I mean, and I mean what I say, but if any guessing needs to come into the conversation, I get toxic. I don't like when people read into or take away from what I mean and make assumptions. I try not to do that. And when I have questions, I'll ask what was really meant. And that's going to one of the toxic habits, which is dropping hints, I think, Mike. I struggle with that. And it's really what it is at its core is passive aggressiveness. I shared earlier that one way I can see where you can set up an environment in your marriage where you don't go there, either one of you, is making open communication safe. So even if you don't like what you're hearing, making it safe, receiving what people say, if something made you feel a certain way, believing it and making it okay, not getting defensive, not attacking. Because one of the reasons Roy and Ron were saying that we get passive aggressive is fear. Either you're afraid to get vulnerable and talk about what you really want or really bothers you, or a fear of rejection, right?
Yeah, all those things. And I love how in romance movies, the guy just knows absolutely the right thing to do in the right moment.
Yeah.
And there's a need for communication to say, like, at least give them a heads up, but don't beat them over the head over it either.
Yeah, this is good. Thank you, guys. Gotta go.
Thanks
Continue the discussion. This is great. And then we put up the 7 toxic habits below on Facebook. So if you go there, continue the discussion, share your tips. If you've struggled with one of them and are like on the other side, share your tips on what's helped you kind of grow out of that toxic habit. Hasta luego, familia. Brian will be back